We like to think that we are the captains of our souls and the masters of our fate. But the ancient Greeks knew a terrifying truth that we have long forgotten. They understood that destiny is not a path you walk, but a cage that closes around you the moment you take your first breath. No matter how fast you run or how deep you hide, the future has already been written in stone. And sometimes, the harder you fight to escape your doom, the faster you run directly into its open arms. This is the story of a king who thought he could outsmart the gods, and a boy born from a prison of bronze who would rise to become the greatest monster slayer in history, only to prove that you can never truly outrun a prophecy. It began in the golden city of Argos, where King Acrisius sat upon a throne that felt more like a seat of judgment. Despite his immense power and wealth, the king lived in a state of constant, suffocating anguish, because he lacked the one thing a king prizes above all else, which was a male heir to carry on his legacy. Desperate to silence the gnawing fear in his gut, Acrisius made the pilgrimage to the Oracle of Delphi, hoping for a glimpse of a son in his future. But the oracle, with eyes that saw through the veil of time, offered him only a nightmare. She told him that not only would he never have a son, but that his destiny was to be murdered by his own grandson. Terror seized the king's heart, cold and absolute, and he realized that the threat lived under his own roof in the form of his only daughter, Danae. To cheat this grim fate, Acrisius commanded a construction that would serve as a vault for the living, forcing the beautiful princess to spend her entire existence trapped within a bronze tower, cut off from the world of men so that she could never conceive the child who would be his killer. But stone walls and bronze doors are nothing to the masters of Olympus. Zeus, the king of the gods, heard the sorrowful prayers of the young girl drifting from her prison, and was struck by a profound desire. He did not come to her as a man, but transformed himself into a shower of shimmering golden rain, pouring through the tiny ventilation cracks of the tower to cascade into Danae's lap, impregnating her with the essence of the divine. When the cries of a newborn baby eventually echoed through the bronze chamber, Acrisius was consumed by a fury that bordered on madness. He refused to believe the child, whom they named Perseus, was the son of a god, instead suspecting his own brother had betrayed him to plant a usurper in his court. Paranoia demanded blood, but Acrisius feared the wrath of the Furies if he were to slay his own kin directly. So he devised a method of execution that would wash the blood from his own hands, locking his daughter and the infant Perseus into a wooden chest and casting them into the churning, unforgiving sea, telling himself that if they died, it was the ocean's doing, not his. Yet the gods do not abandon their own so easily. At the request of Zeus, the seas were calmed by Poseidon, guiding the wooden coffin across the waves until it washed ashore on the island of Seriphos. There they were not found by soldiers or kings, but by a humble fisherman named Dictys, the brother of the island's ruler, King Polydectes. For years peace reigned as Perseus grew from a castaway into a handsome, strong, and brave young man, raised with the morals of a simple fisherman, unaware that the blood of the lightning god coursed through his veins. However, the island was small, and beauty like Danae's does not go unnoticed. The king of Seriphos, Polydectes, became enchanted by Danae and desired her for himself. But he soon realized that her son Perseus had grown into a formidable protector who stood like a wall between the king and his lust. Polydectes needed Perseus gone, and he knew that a sword would only make the boy a martyr. So he decided to use the boy's own pride as a weapon. During a lavish royal banquet, the guests tried to outdo one another with extravagant gifts for the king, presenting towering horses and gleaming jewels, while Perseus, poor and humiliated, stood with empty hands. The shame burned in his chest, hot and sharp, until he made a rash and dangerous vow. He declared that while he had no gold, he would bring the king the head of the Gorgon Medusa, a monster so terrifying that no man had ever looked upon her and lived. The king smiled, a thin, cruel expression, for he saw the perfect opportunity to send the boy to his death. He accepted the offer, commanding Perseus to hunt the pesky creature and never return without her head as a trophy, effectively exiling him into the jaws of a nightmare. Perseus left the safety of the island, driven by the innate knowledge that he was meant for something greater than a fisherman's life. But he was walking blindly into a suicide mission. He had no map, no weapons capable of killing a deity, and no idea where the creature hid. But the Olympians were watching. Hermes, the messenger god, and Athena, the goddess of wisdom, descended to aid their half-brother. Athena gifted him a shield polished to a mirror sheen, a tool of defense that would become crucial for survival, while Hermes offered his guidance, for he knew the secret paths of the world. They directed Perseus first to the Graeae, 3 ancient primeval sisters of the Gorgons, who lived in a cave of perpetual twilight. These hags were nightmares made flesh, sharing a single eye and a single tooth between the 3 of them, passing the organs back and forth in a grotesque ritual. Moving with the stealth of a predator, Perseus infiltrated their lair. He waited for the precise moment the sisters passed the eye, leaving them all blind for a split second, and snatched it from their withered hands. Panic erupted in the cave as the blind hags clawed at the air, desperate and vulnerable. Holding their sight hostage, Perseus brokered a deal. He would return their eye only if they revealed the location of the nymphs who guarded the divine artifacts he needed to kill Medusa. Defeated, the Graeae whispered the secrets, and Perseus traveled to meet the nymphs, who equipped him with the arsenal of a god-slayer. They gave him winged sandals to walk on air, the helmet of Hades, which rendered the wearer completely invisible, and a magical bag capable of containing the toxic power of the Gorgon's head. Finally, Hermes gifted him a divine sword forged by Hephaestus, sharp enough to sever immortal flesh. Fully armed, Perseus flew toward the edge of the world, to the lair of the Gorgons. He learned that Medusa was not always a monster. She had once been a beautiful priestess of Athena, who was cursed for disrespecting the goddess. Her hair turned into a nest of writhing vipers, and her gaze cursed to turn any living thing into stone. As Perseus entered the Gorgon's cave, the atmosphere grew heavy with the smell of dust and silence. He passed countless statues, men frozen in their final moments of terror, mouths open in silent screams, serving as a grim warning of what awaited him. He found Medusa sleeping, but her sisters, Stheno and Euryale, were awake and guarding her. Donning the helmet of invisibility, he slipped past the guardians, his heart hammering against his ribs. When Medusa awoke, the battle was not of strength, but of perception. Perseus dared not look at her directly, for a single glance would end his life. Instead, He watched her reflection in the polished shield Athena had given him, tracking the movements of the serpent-haired demon as she hunted him through the stone pillars. He saw her draw her bow, he saw the snakes snapping at the air, and he waited for his opening. With divine inspiration and the guidance of Athena, he dodged her strike and swung the sword of Hephaestus in a perfect arc, severing Medusa's head from her body. From the gushing blood of the monster sprang the winged horse Pegasus and the golden giant Chrysaor, children of Poseidon trapped within her form. Without looking, Perseus shoved the severed head into his magic bag and fled into the air on his winged sandals, escaping the rage of the remaining Gorgon sisters. The journey home was long, and the weight of the trophy he carried was immense. Exhausted, Perseus stopped in the garden of the Hesperides, the domain of the Titan Atlas, who was condemned to hold up the sky for eternity. Perseus asked for hospitality, announcing himself as the son of Zeus, but the Titan, bitter and angry, mocked him. Atlas roared at the small hero, calling him a liar and a mere mortal who could never defeat a Gorgon, and tried to expel him from the sacred grounds. Insulted and furious, Perseus unleashed the weapon he carried. He pulled Medusa's head from the bag and held it up to the Titan. The ancient giant looked into the dead eyes of the Gorgon, and his flesh instantly hardened into rock, transforming him into a massive mountain range, his beard becoming the forests and his peaks forever holding up the heavens. Continuing his flight, Perseus soared over the kingdom of Ethiopia, where a tragedy was unfolding on the coastline below. The vain Queen Cassiopeia had foolishly bragged that her daughter, Andromeda, was more beautiful than the Nereids, the sea nymphs of Poseidon. In retribution, the sea god had sent a colossal sea monster, Cetus, to ravage the city. The only way to save the kingdom was to sacrifice the princess Andromeda to the beast. Perseus saw the girl chained to the jagged rocks, spray crashing over her terrified form, and fell instantly in love. But as he approached, the ocean erupted. The massive creature breached the surface, a primordial horror of scales and teeth intent on devouring the girl. Perseus did not hesitate. He dove from the sky like a falcon, engaging the monster in a high-speed aerial assault. He used the winged sandals to dart around the beast's snapping jaws, slashing at its hide with his divine sword. The water turned red with blood, splashing onto his sandals and weighing down his wings, threatening to drag him into the crushing depths. It was a chaotic struggle for survival, but Perseus maneuvered with the grace of a dancer and the ferocity of a lion, finally delivering a fatal blow that slew the beast and saved the princess. As a reward for his heroism, the king of Ethiopia granted Perseus the hand of Andromeda in marriage, and together they set sail back to Seriphus to finish the story that had begun in a banquet hall so long ago. But the homecoming was not a joyous celebration. Perseus returned to find that his mother, Danae, was living in fear, having been forced to flee the palace to escape the abuse of King Polydectes. She had taken refuge in a temple, the only place the king's lust could not reach her. When Polydectes heard Perseus had returned, he did not believe the boy had succeeded. He assumed the boy was lying and sent his guards to kill him. Perseus, fueled by a cold, righteous fury at the treatment of his mother, marched into the palace. He was outnumbered, an entire army against one man, but he carried death in a bag. As the soldiers charged, Perseus shouted to his friends to close their eyes. He whipped out the head of Medusa one last time and in an instant the shouting, charging army was silenced, turned into a grotesque gallery of stone statues. He found the coward King Polydectes cowering behind his throne and forced him to look, turning the tyrant into a permanent monument of his own fear. With the tyrant dead, Perseus made the fisherman Dictys the new king of Seriphus, and returned the magical artifacts to the gods, giving Medusa's head to Athena, who mounted it on her shield as the ultimate symbol of protection. But the story of Perseus could not end without the final thread of fate being tied. Word of his deeds spread across Greece, reaching the ears of his grandfather, Acrisius. Terrified that the prophecy was finally coming for him, Acrisius fled Argos, hiding in a distant city to escape his grandson. But fate has a wicked sense of humor. Perseus, holding no grudge and unaware of his grandfather's location, traveled to a neighboring kingdom to compete in athletic games to honor the gods. He stepped up to throw the discus, a display of strength and skill. As he released the heavy stone disc, a sudden gust of wind, or perhaps the hand of a god, caught it, curving its path wildly off course. The discus slammed into the crowd, striking an old man in the head and killing him instantly. That old man was Acrisius. Without intent, without malice, and without even knowing who the man was, Perseus had fulfilled the oracle's prophecy. It was a chilling reminder that while we may slay monsters and topple kings, we remain pawns in a much larger game. Perseus went on to found the glorious city of Mycenae and became the ancestor of the greatest hero of them all, Hercules. But he left behind a legacy that whispers a warning to us all. You can conquer the world, but you can never conquer your fate.